the whole process. All right, there we are. YouTube crowd, this is your microphone. Put you right here on the right breast. Locals crowd, this is your microphone. Put you over here on the left breast. I don't have a preferred breast, so nobody's getting preferential treatment here. See if anybody comes in. I would love to have some folks to interact with today, but it is, well, about 12:30 on Friday, and lots of folks probably working. Locals, you're right there. YouTube, you're right there. YouTube, if you're wondering about locals, you can join our group there at thelastsymptom.locals.com. We'd love to have you over there. I think a lot more, well, I know that a whole lot more goes on over at the locals, on the locals platform than goes on here at YouTube. That's nice. Locals has added a thing that tells me how much remaining time I've got left for the live stream. They give me an hour, which for a kind of a new startup company, I think is pretty generous. But that's also thanks to the locals crowd, you know, the people who have joined the last symptom of community there on locals and has made it something that, you know, popular, made it a popular place to be. All right, well, while we're waiting for people to come in, even those who aren't here live are going to see this later. So I just have some things I thought I'd share with you, and was really hoping to get to interact with some folks. But like I said, it's early in the day. I've never done one of these so early in the day before, and it's probably hard for people to break out of whatever they're doing and come in and say hi. This is from the news this past week. Will Smith, the actor, admits his father was physically abusive. Will Smith is sharing details about his father's physically abusive nature. The actor opened up about the violence he experienced during his childhood years for a recent profile for GQ, which included passages from his new memoir. The topic initially came up when journalist Wesley Lowery mentioned Smith's upcoming role in King Richard, which sees him play Richard Williams, the father of tennis star Venus and Serena Williams. Smith explained that there were similarities between Richard Williams, who was known to be tough on his daughters, and his own father. So he identified with kind of the rough nature of their father. The Men in Black star later circled back to his own father, recalling watching him punch his mother in the side of the head. In his memoir, Smith wrote that the moment defined who I am today. I would say probably in more ways than Will Smith appreciates at this point. So he goes on to talk about all this, you know, strife and stuff that was going on in his home. And he actually, one interesting thing I thought he said, my father was violent in my house. So a part of the whole creation of Will Smith, you know, the joking, funny, silly guy, was to make sure that my father was entertained enough not to hurt my mother or anybody in the house. And he says that as a result, he learned unhealthy coping mechanisms. And for years, he would interpret a woman's disapproval as a loss of love. And here's the part I'm just not sold on. But he says he has managed to work on healing that through the positive relationships with his own family. If I'm not mistaken, it weren't too long ago that Will Smith was kind of airing, he and his wife were kind of airing their dirty laundry on national television, right? She was having an affair and all this stuff was going on. And he didn't look too happy to me. He didn't look very content. I got a fly in here again. That's Frederick the Fly. Frederick the Fly. And he is friends with Norman the Cricket. Just trying to get into my coffee right here. So, Will Smith probably has more work to do before he totally understands everything he's really dealing with. Rabushka says she's cooking dinner while she listens. What are you cooking? It's just about lunchtime here for me, so. Spaghetti. Nice. I haven't had spaghetti for forever. Too many carbs. Hey, how many of you guys know about spaghetti squash? You ever had spaghetti squash? I think spaghetti squash is like a miracle vegetable or gourd or whatever you want to call it. It's amazing. It's like it's like God knew that one day we were going to be eating spaghetti, so he gave us an all-natural spaghetti. X Talsno says that spaghetti squash is a favorite. Yeah, and we're just coming into the season here. It's autumn, so we're just coming into the season for squashes and gourds and calabasas. Boy, that Frederick the Fly, he wants to be on TV. That's what he wants. Got another story for you from this week. Linda Evangelista. Now, I didn't really know this lady just right off the bat, but here's a picture of her. YouTube, there's the person I'm talking about, and Locals, there's the person I'm talking about. Linda Evangelista says she was left deformed by cosmetic procedure. Here's the context. She's a supermodel. She's a supermodel, and I think she'd been in a movie or something. Let me see. Okay, here it goes. She rose to fame in the 1990s as one of a group of emerging supermodels, gracing high-end catwalks around the world on the cover of leading fashion magazine Vogue. She also appeared in a George Michael music video alongside Naomi Campbell, Cindy Crawford, Hubba Hubba, and Christy Turlington. So, she's a famous model. And listen to this. As I read this, think about what we often talk about where true contentment comes from. It comes from a sense of loving oneself, right? It's an inner thing. It's an appreciation that your value as a person is an inherent quality. So it's not affected by how much you weigh, what your hair looks like on any given day, what shirt you're wearing, what car you drive, what your accomplishments are. It's inherent. It cannot be affected by, and inherent means it can't be affected by anything like that. So let's see if you think Linda Evangelista lives with the healthy understanding that her worth as a person is an inherent quality to her, or would you say that her most important thing is the external, that her worth is indeed affected by what her hair looks like or how much she weighs. And you know, when we read this, think about how that affects her view of other people, right? So it's not just the way that these perceptions and these misunderstandings about the nature of feeling self and life affect just her. Nah, because then she looks at the world, and when she's talking to you, another human being, what kind of evaluations is she making about you, and what are they based on? They're based on how pretty you are, how much money you've got, what your accomplishments are or are not, right? So this is a serious thing. So let's go ahead and read it. The 56-year-old revealed that she had experienced a rare cosmetic side effect of this treatment that she got, this fat reduction procedure, 5 years ago, which actually increased her fat cells. I have been left, as the media has described, unrecognizable, she told her 900,000 Instagram followers, probably a lot of them young girls who are also unusually self-conscious about their own value as people. Evangelista explained it was the reason she disappeared from the public eye. She can't even come out in public anymore because she weighs a little bit too much than she used to. The Canadian model went on to say she had undergone 2 painful, unsuccessful corrective surgeries after the slimming procedure, also known as body contouring, had the opposite effect. To my followers who have wondered why I've not been working while my peers' careers have been thriving, you see the bitterness here. The other beautiful women she's in competition with, they're doing well, and she ain't. The reason is that I was brutally disfigured by a procedure which did the opposite of what it promised, Evangelista explained. Yeah, it's probably not even that bad. If any one of you or even I looked a fraction of what she probably looks like right now while she's just hating herself and had her money and her connections and all that stuff, we probably wouldn't be complaining. But for her, it's the end of the world. She said the side effects she experienced has not only destroyed my livelihood, it has sent me into a cycle of deep depression, profound sadness, and the lowest depths of self-loathing. In the process, I have become a recluse. What do you think about that? It's the only possibility for somebody whose entire value system, just like I was talking about in the right, a recluse that is blasting it on social media. Just like in this week's episode of the Last Symptom Podcast, Season 4, Episode 7, the apology process. We talked a whole lot about the value system, about how unhealthy people are, the way they perceive the nature of value and how it works and where it comes from is based entirely on what they imagine other people might think about a thing, how they might feel about a thing. And so nothing just has value on its very own. No, it's got to come from external sources. So she's now in the lowest depths of self-loathing because she's not as skinny as she used to be. She ain't as skinny as she used to be. And now she's in the lowest depths of self-loathing. You see the relationship there between the underlying attitude of value, how it works, where it comes from, and the perception of her own value as a person. Pour her, Babushka says. Pour her another drink. She should swap lives for a week with someone a lot less fortunate, and I reckon she'd be grateful for what she has. Sounds a little narcissistic. Well, it sounds unhealthy, that's for sure. Sounds unhealthy, and don't sound like it's based on a belief system that that your value doesn't change depending on what your body looks like today. And by the way, I used to live with that strong belief myself, right? I was compulsively driven to just be like an elite athlete all the time. I'm not anymore, as you can tell. But compulsively driven for that. And it's just not a happy way to live. It's not a happy way to live when you believe that your worth depends on how much you weigh today. And just to put that in context, your weight is always doing this, and it will your entire life. So there's no such thing as a person who, we see these movie stars on TV and in the movies, and they always look the way we expect them to look. But even their weight is fluctuating. And between movies and projects and stuff like that, believe me, they're eating pizza and doing what they want to do. As a professional aspect, as an aspect of their professional lives, for them, staying in shape and looking good is a legitimate part of their responsibilities. If they want to stay in the business and they want to, live up to a movie, for example, you don't want to see Superman walking around with donut belly, right? So anybody playing Superman has got to be in tip-top shape. But, think about like Henry Cavill, I think that's his name, guy who is currently represents Superman. You look at him on his social media, while he does stay in shape, and he never completely lets himself go, he doesn't stay in the elite shape that he does when he's doing these Superman movies. So it's a job. But unhealthy people, we look at these people and we kind of just assume that they lock into a weight and a body shape and they just stay that way their entire lives. Now that's a lot of work. That's a lot of work. And the only time they're at the prime time, they're at the elite levels of that, or when it actually has a practical purpose. They're going to be starring in a movie. So, and then think about how long they have to maintain that. 3 months? 3 months, and then they can let it go for a little bit until their next big project. So that's the real nature of that. Does anybody have anything they would like me to address? I've got other things here to talk about, and I'm just going to use up the hour, probably. But if you have any questions or anything you guys would like me to talk about, I'm willing to do that. I know that most of yous are probably not here in the United States right now, because most of the folks who are here with me in the United States are probably working. So I was going to ask if you guys had your coffee yet today, but if it's evening for you, I'm sure you have had your coffee, if you drink coffee. Get out of here. Have I ever struggled with negative self-talk? Yeah, my entire life. My entire life. Well, I was about to say that my self-talk was only negative, but that's not true. I would get on these highs. So when I would get on these highs, this is when I still had borderline personality disorder, I'd be kind of like in a euphoric state where I felt like I was a superstar. But it was based on, the way people were treating me, or the fortune in my life at that period of time. And it was very short lasting. So I'd have these euphoric moments of, you're a superstar, Brian, and I'd be imagining myself kind of like this superstar. In those moments, I would have sort of this inner self-talk about how awesome I was and everything. But I don't think I ever really believed it. I knew it was just like for pretend. And I knew it was temporary. So yes, my negative self-talk lasted all the way up until just years ago, about maybe 8 years ago, 9 years ago, when I started coming to the end of my authentic recovery from borderline personality disorder. And now the negative self-talk is very, very rare. Doing this work with the last symptom and dealing with so many people, there are times where I've experienced imposter syndrome, where I feel like I'm not qualified to be representing such an important thing. But then I'll sit down and talk with myself, and I'll observe the evidence that whether I feel like I'm not qualified, but excellent enough, I guess, to represent these sorts of things. It's just fallen on me because of the circumstances. I have a thing in here, actually, I was going to talk about Rabushka. I'm just going to keep talking about this for a minute. Let me see if I can find it. It's related to this. Get out of here. Get out of here. Darn fly. Get out of here. That's the problem with having my big door open. Well, and now I can't find it, of course, but the answer is yes. A lot of negative self-talk, but that all went away with authentic recovery. Rabushka says she's trying to reprogram with positive words, but I'm struggling to really believe the words I'm saying. Well, I've done a lot of shows about that. That the positive talk, while it feels good in a moment, it's not enough. You can't just tell yourself good things that you don't really believe. I can tell myself all day long that gravity doesn't exist. Brian, gravity doesn't exist, or Brian, you can fly like Superman. Just go out there, just fly. You just have to believe it enough. No matter how many times I tell myself that, I know it's not true. So when you're telling yourself things that are positive about yourself, the reason why they don't stick is because you don't really believe it. Deep down, you don't really believe it. So how do you get to those deep-seated things and change them so that you really do start to believe it? Well, it takes some time. And I've talked about it about like language, when I was learning Spanish. When I would go out and I would talk to people, I could stay in my room and study grammar, memorize vocabulary every day. There was a time when I was memorizing 300 new vocabulary words every day. People say that's impossible. Well, I did it, so it's not impossible. That's how driven I was to learn the language. But even spending 10, 12 hours a day studying Spanish grammar, memorizing 300 new words a day, every day, that still was not effective as me going to the grocery store and running into some people speaking Spanish and trying to speak to them in Spanish. So when it comes to this positive talk towards ourselves, when you're trying to go from believing that your worth is dependent on what other people think, its value is based on external measurements. When you're going from that to, no, my worth as a person is based on what I am, a person. So I'm never going to not be a person. That's where my value comes from. So it can't be affected by anything. Can't even be affected by whether I'm homeless or not. A homeless person has the same amount of value as a person as you do with a good paying job, maybe. So when you're going from that one belief system to another, the way that you really get to the bottom of it and you change fundamentally what you believe for real, at the very foundation of everything, is that first of all, you keep in mind the idea that your value is inherent to you, and then you go about in life mindfully keeping that in mind. And you see, with that premise, how you interact with life and how life interacts with you. And what happens is you begin to see that it's the absolute truth. The results you start getting back are much more harmonious with life, much more consistent, and much more positive than when you're approaching life with the other belief system that you don't have inherent worth. So when you start getting these positive, these absolutely undeniable evidence back in real time, in real life, that begins to unravel the belief system that you originally lived with. That's how you do it. I hope that is understandable. I'm fighting off flies and the birds are singing. Good. That's a process. It's just the same way with like learning Spanish, I'm studying it in a book and I'm saying, I think I totally understand this. But then I have to go out and I have to kind of exercise some faith that that really is the way the language works. And go out on a limb, kind of step off the ledge and try it out and see how it works. And then when people begin replying to me just like, oh, I totally understood you. They don't seem confused. They don't even pause to wonder what I'm saying. I say to myself, that's exactly how the language works. I did it right. Because you see, the results I'm getting back from real life are proving that I'm doing it the right way. I'm looking at the thing the right way. And that's the same way with going from hating ourselves, or, which is exactly the same as perceiving ourselves as not having inherent worth. And people say, well, how do you get from you don't believe you have inherent worth to viewing yourself as worthless? Those aren't the same things, but it is the same thing once you understand the effect of it. Because let's say that, okay, so this remote control here, let's say that the only value it has is the fact that it operates my TV, it's got all these nice buttons and everything, right? Let's say that that's where it gets its worth from. Take away the buttons. Take away its ability to control my television. Now all we've got is this plastic shell. What good is that? What good is the plastic shell? It's not any good at all. It doesn't serve any purpose. I can't even use it for any other thing. It becomes worthless. So the fact that it's not inherent, it doesn't have inherent value, means that if you take away the things that give it value, suddenly it's just an empty shell. It has no value. And that's the way we perceive ourselves as people. When we as people believe that external things have to grant us value, so our value is not inherent. Something else has to grant it to us, has to give us buttons, nice pretty collars, and a purpose. You take away the pretty collars, you take away the buttons, you just leave the person, just them on their own, and you weigh them on their own merits. What do you got? You got nothing. They're worth less, totally worthless. That's why it's so important to go from believing that your worth comes from outside to understanding the truth, that it's inherent to you. Your worth is based on what you are. You're a person. In this week's episode of the podcast, I talked about a banana. How do you perceive bananas? If enough people said bananas are totally worthless, would you begin perceiving bananas as worthless? Or does a banana have some value just on the merit that it is a banana? The answer is that it has value just on the merit that it is a banana. Whether you personally like bananas or not is irrelevant to the fact that a banana still does have value. So it's the entire fundamental way that we as people perceive value. Can a thing have value based on the merit of what it is, regardless of whether people like it or not? And the answer is yes. And the answer is definitely definitely yes, not less, but definitely yes, if you are a human being. I often tell people to imagine walking into a nursery. Stephanie drops in to say hello. She can't stay, but she's dropping in to say hello. That's very nice. Hello, Stephanie. So just imagine going into a nursery. Think about how critical you are about yourself and the demands you hold upon yourself for whether or not you have any value or not, you personally. And now, imagine going into a nursery. You've got these babies. They were just born yesterday. And you're looking out at all these babies. I'd like for you to then pick one out. I'd like you to pick the ones out that don't have any value. Just pick the babies out that are worthless, and we'll just get rid of them. You can't do it. It breaks your heart to even think about it. And you totally reject any notion that any of those babies cannot have value. And yet you do the same thing. You do exactly that to yourself. It's not logical. She says that hit her. It's not logical. You wouldn't do it to any other child, and yet you do it to yourself. You were once a child. You haven't changed from being a person. You're still a person. The self-talk, the kind of self-talk you need to have toward yourself is the same type of self-talk that you would have to any precious thing that you're looking at, any other precious person. So that's another way to kind of walk around thinking about it. How many minutes I got here? 27 minutes. All right. This experiment is nice because I'm realizing that if I'm going to do a live stream, probably in the evenings is the best time for that. For most people. Definitely fewer flies. Here's something I thought was interesting that I noticed here recently. Apple come out with the new Apple iPhone 13 that I'm drooling all over. For the longest time, and you folks on YouTube there, I'm talking to you on my phone. It's an iPhone SE, second generation. So I don't typically spend very much money on an iPhone because I just figure, well, it's got the same chip. I don't really like the Face ID thing. I don't feel like that's as convenient as Apple thinks it is. I'd rather use my fingerprint. But anyway, the new iPhone 13 come out, and I was considering getting a second iPad for these live streams so I could run them simultaneously. And then I thought, well, instead of doing that, instead of spending money on a separate iPad, why don't I just upgrade and get the big iPhone, the new iPhone, with all the bells and whistles, and see how that works out. So we'll see. Gotta see if it's in the finances. But here's one thing I noticed when I was watching the Apple event. You folks ever watch the Apple event? Here's one thing I thought of and noticed, and I wondered, now that I mention it, if you'll ever be able to watch another Apple event and not notice it too. Here's how it goes. The whole Apple event, on the surface, is designed to reflect a celebration of diversity, right? The whole Apple event is designed to celebrate, in a kind of a almost nauseating way, diversity. So they've been really mixing it up, getting people of color, people of different races, making sure that they use plenty of women, right? Use plenty of gay people and plenty of straight people, really mixing it up to present this image of this fantastic celebration of diversity. I love diversity. As you all know, my life is proof of that I do love diversity. But here's what I noticed about the Apple event. That's not diversity. It's an illusion of diversity, but it's not diversity. It's only an illusion of diversity. Yes, they do march out a bunch of different races and sexes of people, but these are all people. Notice this, the next time you watch an Apple event. These are all people who, regardless of their race or sex or sexual orientation, all dress the same. They all talk the same. They all act the same. They all think the same. They are all interested in the same things. Basically, when you watch an Apple event, what you're watching are a bunch of clones coming out to the stage, and that is not diversity. Now, these clones look different as far as, you know, their racial heritage goes and their sexual orientations and everything. But that's as far as that goes. That's as far as that diversity goes. They are clones of one another. They're all wearing the same little sweaters, the same skinny pants, with almost the identical casual shoes. Every one of them. It's like a JCPenney catalog. They've all got the Apple Watch on their wrists. Now, you can argue that that's because they work for Apple. But if Apple really wanted to celebrate, truly was interested in celebrating diversity, what would that look like? If they weren't just interested in an appearance of diversity, but if they really wanted to celebrate diversity, what would that look like? Think about how much a lady wearing like hunter plaid and wearing an I love deer hunting cap, think about how much she would stand out walking out onto the Apple stage. Hey there, y'all. Let's talk today about this new Apple Watch. And she's got this I love deer hunting ball cap on. How much would she stand out? She'd really stand out, wouldn't she? Why would she stand out? Because Apple is not presenting real diversity. That's why she would stand out. Because the diversity that they claim to be celebrating is not diversity. Real diversity would be a contrast. Strict, sharp contrast. One person comes out, they're one type of person. Another person comes out, totally different type of person. Might have different political views. Might love hunting. Might love a lot of things that Tim Cook doesn't love. That would be diversity. Might come from an entirely different type of background. Doesn't matter, doesn't matter if a person is black or not. If they think like you, talk like you, walk like you, are only, share the exact same ideals as you, that's not diversity. It's only skin, pardon the pun, it's only skin deep diversity. All right, so we've got the redneck lady. She comes out wearing an I love deer hunting ball cap, and she starts talking about the Apple Watch. And then let's say that we let a black guy with a bandana on his head, wearing a wife-beater t-shirt and gold chains around his neck and droopy jeans. Let's let him come out and he can introduce the new iPad mini. That would be diversity, don't you think? That would be real diversity. And then let's get a Mexican guy. He's going to present the new iPhone. And the Mexican guy will come out in muddy cowboy boots, large belt buckle, cowboy hat, and speaking only in Spanish. So Tim Cook is going to have to get him an interpreter. This would be a real celebration of diversity. But that's not what Apple's truly interested in. Why will you never see these sorts of people on stage presenting things at an Apple event? Because the people behind these things aren't genuinely interested in real diversity. What they're interested in is the comfort of everybody thinking and agreeing about the same things and viewing the world in the same ways and caring about the same things. Rabushka says, maybe they're all like that, so no one who's watching has too much of an opinion. That's the thing. They're not these people aren't allowed to have their own opinions. And if they do have different opinions than the person next to them, they're not allowed to get up on the Apple stage, I guarantee you, and present a thing. They all have to dress like these, what's the word for it? Metrosexuals? Metrosexuals. Where they just look like a JCPenney catalog. That's the way you have to look when you go out there. I would like to see somebody who dresses like people really dress, you know, like in the South or in the ghettos or out in the farm country. You know, let them come out. Let them truly represent themselves and their heritage. That would be diversity. Real diversity. Let people have differences of opinions. Let the Trump supporters come out there and let the Biden supporters come out there. But either way, if you're going to celebrate real diversity, don't just give it just give it lip service. Go all out. Rabushka says, oh, Brian, we aren't allowed free spend now. What is free spend? Speech. Oh, free speech. No. Yeah, we're not. In fact, we'll see how long this lasts on YouTube. It might not last. Do you remember that YouTube banned me for like 2 weeks about a year ago because I had a Muslim guest on the Last Symptom podcast? I don't know if they were trying to protect people talking poorly about Muslims or what it was, but either way, they banned me based purely on the fact that my guest was Muslim and that Muslim was in the title of that episode of the show. So I don't have a very high opinion of YouTube. You know, I'm using them, but I'm not putting all my eggs in that basket, I'll tell you that. So anyway, that's not related really to most of the topics we talk about, but I thought that it was an interesting topic anyway, this thing about Apple and this illusion of diversity. And, you know, in the shower this morning, there's a lot of topics that I like to talk about that involve seeing through the superficial illusions of things. And it's things like this Apple event and this whole absurd, fake notion of diversity. When you see through it, you get good at seeing through these things and seeing what is really there. This skill, this talent stack that you develop to be able to do that can only help you in your recovery efforts, because you have to do a lot of that in authentic recovery. You have to look through what the appearance is. My family's perfectly normal. You know, my family's just loving, and boom, your vision has to penetrate that so that you see the true nature of it. So it's a really nice skill. Megs says, "Hi Brian, just wanted to say I really enjoyed the new episode this week." Thank you, Megs. I spent a lot of time on that. I was telling somebody else, I didn't really want to devote an entire episode to this Gabby Petito and that story. But I did want to talk about it while it's still fresh in the news. It's a current topic. And so I tried to squeeze it into this week's show. And I just had so much I wanted to talk about it that it made the show go really long. But better to do it like that, better to kind of fold it into an episode where I'm talking about another thing too, rather than dedicate an entire episode to a single person like that. I didn't really want to dedicate one whole show to a single person like that. But I'm glad you enjoyed it. And I hope that the apology process that we talked about, I hope most people endured to the part where I talked about the apology process and got the benefit of that. Meg says that when I said to imagine what real love would look like, I realized I'm not really sure. I haven't had many good examples of it in my life. Well, whether or not you've had good examples or positive examples of that in your life, that should probably be irrelevant, because you should still be able to sit back, close your eyes, and imagine what the purest, most positive quality in the universe would have to give birth to and what it could not give birth to. So that's not too hard to do. When we talk about love, it is the purest, most positive quality that exists in the universe. So you can close your eyes and you can imagine somebody being selfish, in a home. Hey, would you mind if I turn the air conditioner on? It's a little warm in here. No, you can't turn the air conditioner on because I'm cold. Well, that's not love. Not if we're talking about the purest, most good quality in the universe. The purest, most good quality in the universe would be the opposite of that. Yeah, I'm willing to be uncomfortable for your comfort, for sure. Go ahead and turn the air conditioner on. So it's things like that. You got to say, how must it act and behave, and how can it absolutely not act and behave? And that shouldn't be too hard to do. Of course, I had my mentor Dave Selvage in my life. Now, I should be able to find this. I also wanted to talk about him. And this goes along with the conversation of not having examples, positive examples in our lives, or having positive examples in our lives. When Dave died, so Jordan was, so you know that Jordan was my best friend. His dad was my Cherokee mentor, Dave. And when Jordan was killed in the car accident, I went to see him. And so I was going to see him kind of regularly. I was living in Philadelphia at the time, and he was in Toledo, Ohio. So I would drive during this time of grief, just to kind of be there and support him. So I went to see him maybe 3 months after Jordan had been killed, and sitting in his studio talking to him, and I said, so how you doing and everything like that. And he said, well, my company, he worked for the gas company. He said the gas company has very graciously offered our family counseling at no charge. And now remember, this was before I knew I had borderline personality disorder. It was before I did any kind of self-improvement work on myself or anything. But when he said that, I kind of, inside of myself, when he talked about them offering him counseling, I was like, I kind of scoffed at that inside myself. Now, I didn't let him see I was scoffing, but inside I was scoffing at that. And I said, oh yeah, so what are you going to do about that? Are you thinking about taking advantage of that? He said, absolutely. He said, I've already been taking advantage of it. And I said, you have? And he said, yeah, I've been talking to this girl for a while, for like the last month or something like that. And I said, is it helping? He said, well, it's better than nothing. Now, here's the amazing thing about that story. Dave Selvage was the wisest, most healthy person I've ever known in my life. He was the wisest, he was the most patient, he was the kindest, he was the smartest, he was the most insightful person I've ever known. And here this man is telling me that he's going to talk to some girl who's probably in her mid-20s about the heaviest things on his mind and that are going on in his life. Think about the humility that Dave Selvage lived with, that him being the wisest, smartest, most insightful guy of all time, got the offer to go talk to this 20-something-year-old girl, the counselor, and he goes, yeah, I'm going to do that. I'm going to take advantage of that. What do you think that taught me? Well, it taught me tremendous humility. And then later, when I was going through my own BPD crisis, do you think that had an effect on me being at least willing to consider some things and talk to people that I thought maybe I was smarter than, but go and listen to them anyway? Sure it did. Sure that had a super positive effect on me. The other thing is that, as you know, this is a requirement. What Dave did willingly is one of the requirements, is one of the conditions that I have in place for my father if he wants to have a relationship with me, and he will not do it. Not even to demonstrate love to his own son will he do it. And it's the simplest thing in the world. It's not complicated. Now think about the contrast between the example I grew up with, my father, who absolutely won't do it, even though he knows he's got all the reasons in the world to do it. And this other man, my mentor, who nobody had to twist his arm at all. They only had to offer it to him. And he said, I'll take that offer. Isn't that incredible? So a lot of people I talk to today, a lot of partners in relationships reach out to me and wonder what I can do for their partner. I'm not even willing to talk to them about their partner because their partner's a lost cause until the partner says, well, I want to be proactive and I want to reach out to this guy, or I want to start finding answers. But as long as the partner's doing it for them, why do I need to talk to that partner? They're not even engaged. They're not even interested in it. So it would be a total waste of my time and that person's time. And my heart goes out to those partners that are trying to do it for the person, but they're wasting their time. They need to stop wasting their time and stop wasting their focus on this other person and start looking at themselves and making decisions for themselves and taking care of themselves. That's what they need to do. But anyway, that's the story of Dave Selvage, wisest, most insightful person in the world. Says, yeah, I'm going to go and talk to this 26-year-old girl who probably doesn't know anything. But it wasn't just humility. It was also him recognizing his true limits as a person. Not thinking more of himself than is necessary. recognizing that as a person, you know, emotionally, we all have these limits. And here he was being pushed to the limit, you know, having just lost his son in a car accident and dealing with that grief and everything. And just, to me, just, I can't express to you how wonderful I still think that is, that contrast. My father, who still will not do it, and Dave Selvage, who could have very, very easily said, well, what good is that going to do? What's she going to tell me that I don't know? I mean, I'm 3 times her age. I've had much more life experience. What is she going to tell me that I don't know? He didn't even, his brain didn't even go there. He just said, I'm going to take advantage of that. There might be something there. I'm not all powerful and all knowing, and you know, I'm not this all, I'm not this God creature. So of course I'm going to go and see if there's anything there that can help me. And he had been going for like a month at that point when he and I had that conversation. So it definitely taught me something. It was definitely a really nice influence on me. And you think about that, you know, I never did get to tell him how much that impacted me, just that conversation between him and me. But in your own lives, think about how your example can say so much more than just words can. Your attitude, how that can say so much more than words can, because people are observing that, kids and other people. And you know, we might not be around one of these days, but the effects that we have on other people, the positive effect that we have on other people, might continue for many, many years. Folks, I'm down to the last 2 minutes that I have before it cuts me off. So thank you for being here, Megs, Rabushka, everybody else who dropped in, you folks here on YouTube. I can't see who you are because I'm doing it on my phone for you, but I really appreciate you being here. I've been watching as people come in and out. And I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. I know that this week's episode of the Last Sentence podcast is a little bit long, but if you can set aside time to listen to it, I think it will do you very good. Barrett says she's happy to catch the live stream. Thank you, Barrett. I'm happy for you to catch it too. And I hope that it was offered some practical things for you that will benefit you in the weeks to come. So I'm going to log off here. Do something nice for yourselves, you guys. Thank you, Megs. I'd love listening to you talk too, if I could. We will do that one of these days. Zoom. All right, guys. Bye. Let's see. YouTube. Bye.